Everybody, Natalie coming to live, brewing coffee. Got my coffee here. hmm Yum oh. Again, pinion coffee today again. So yummy. Love my coffee. So grateful that I get to have my coffee. Um, so let's get started. And I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today. And typically I get on here and just start to talk. So much is happening in the world, right? There's so much going on right now. So much um we like I said, it's almost like a volcano, right? It's erupting and people's psyche and people are trying to understand how they fit into this world, what is their purpose, how they can maneuver through this world. I mean, there's so much going on. And there's also these challenges that we're facing, like stay in shelter, saying that there's this, well, having the virus and all this stuff. We've been locked into our homes for a while. So some people, that's not easy for them. And then on top of that, we have all of these Black Lives Matters, and we have protesters who are peacefully protesting, and then we have people who are looting and rioting, which I don't think are interconnected to the peaceful protesters. Okay. And so we sort of have all of this mesh is goulash. Plus, we have in the US a president where people don't like him, people do like him. Some people think there's just all of this stuff is happening, right? And the one beautiful thing I see is unity. Unity is starting to occur, which is amazing on a massive scale. Okay. Unity in the fact that even police officers are starting to unify with the protesters that are marching peacefully and saying, hey, not all of us are the same way. And we want to support and protect the public. We want to support and protect innocent lives. We're not here to take away life. So a lot going on. And I said, well, how do I fit into the picture of this? What is it that I contribute? Is there anything I can contribute? Sometimes feeling like maybe I can't contribute because I love everybody. I see everybody as equal, even the people that um, you know, may feel like they judge me or may feel like they throw stones at me or may feel like they want to harm me. I still love those individual people as well. Even the ones that have done what society would peg as god awful things to other individuals, I love them as well. And I had a friend say, be careful about saying, oh, life matters. Well, I didn't really know because I don't follow, again, I don't follow political stuff. But this is something that I feel is touching the hearts of every life and for a reason. And I want to talk about sort of how I understand it and see it from my viewpoint. And then bring it back to, of course, love and how we can all interconnect. So she said to be careful with that. Well, I didn't even know that I said that. And I didn't understand the implications of what that might mean. And so, of course, I started saying, well, let me look at this. Let me see what she's trying to tell me. Let me understand. And I started to think about my story. And just as I think about my story, I think about every individual story. I can tell you that going in college, right? I didn't understand. I mean, I feel some discrimination, but not really. I never really understood it. And I said, people talk about racism, they talk about discrimination, but I never really experienced it. And I was like, is this a true thing? Because I see everybody as equal, but I guess not everybody does. Okay. And it was confusing for me. I didn't understand it because I didn't experience life that way. Okay. And so I was like, well, I don't think I've ever been discriminated upon. And they've told me that because I'm Latina, because I'm this, because I'm that, that I should feel it. But I didn't. And it's probably because I was raised in a predominantly Hispanic community and state. And so perhaps there wasn't that discrimination because we were all the same in some way. Our Black community, very small. But we did have the school that I went to, we had probably more black students than not, and I didn't see them as any different than me, right? So for me, it was just I didn't get it. And it wasn't until I got into college. So I was in college and I had a friend, she was a Mexican descent, and she came and she was doing research, and we were talking about race and racism and all this stuff. And for me, it just didn't I just didn't understand. I said, I don't understand why you're talking about racism. Do you really feel like it is? And she goes, well, maybe it's because you're white. And I said that you don't feel that. And I thought about this for a minute, and I said, because I'm white? I'm like, I'm not white. But she was talking about this color of my skin, not maybe the way that I was raised or the fact that I'm ethnically Latina, but the fact that my skin was white. And I thought about it and I said, you're probably right. Maybe I have a different experience because of that. Maybe I'm not judged because identity, right? The way that people can view or even create this concept of racism and discrimination is based on visually what we can see. We can see color. And so we're human, right? We're all human. We all have DNA. Good morning, Scott. We all have DNA. We're all human. We're all, but what can distinguish us, right? And what they utilized to discriminate was the color of our skin. And so for that, it's easy to look and say, oh yeah, I see color. And because I see color, I can now use that as a means of separation to distinguish between us versus them. But there really isn't no difference. But they've utilized it, and by they, I mean our founding fathers or the individuals who brought slaves over, they that brought racism here or slavery to the country or pulled people from Africa, brought them over, right? Um, have said, okay, we're gonna our people when they colonized, right, and they've put Native Americans um brutally beat them, raped them, like I said before, put them and said, well, we can see that they're darker than us. So now we're going to use colors as a means to separate. No difference. They're no different. They're human. They eat, they poop, right? We all do the same things. Good morning, Suze. And so with that, right, we have sort of this separation and there's this identifiable marker. It's almost like the scarlet letter, right? Where we put this big A and we're like, oh, we can tell because there's something that distinguishes me from them. But there is no difference, right? And we have all of these parables like he who lived without sin cast the first stone when we're all the same. Okay, but here's what happened with the distinction, and here's how I understand how I fit into this. And I'm going to say it for those individuals that are lighter in skin color. We will never, we can never understand what it's like to be in the body of a black man. We can never understand that. And I'm going to put brown men in there too, because we will never understand that. I was raised around a bunch of cholos and all those things. And same thing, right? There's racial profiling that happens. Now, is it by fault? No, it's human nature sometimes to look at people and then profile them. That's a human thing. People are trained to do this. They're trained to do that, get down, and that kind of stuff. Now, what happened was totally an act of I can't even say what it was. I don't even understand the psyche behind the cop that was doing this, right? I don't know who he is. I haven't talked to him. I have no idea. But to harm that individual. Now, here's the deal. There is some privilege that comes with even my skin tone. And I put a post right on my Facebook um, because I have a niece, and my niece she is black. She is black. Um, she's not fully black, right? She's Latina, but she has a black father, and so she's black, and she has big, beautiful hair and all this. And when she was growing up, she tried to figure out who she was in the world. Okay, and she used to always be like, I love your hair, I want your hair. And I used to say, no, I love your hair, love you. But the thing is that I would never understand from her perspective what she went through as an African American child and having African American blood in her, right? Because there's that distinguishable, her hair different, her skin color a little darker, and children were cruel to her. And in a way, and saying derogatory things to her in a way that I will never experience. There's nothing wrong with being able to understand that because our color is lighter, that there is some privilege that comes with that. It's in recognizing and saying these things that's going to help us heal and recognize that there we'll never understand fully what it's like to walk outside. I don't. I don't understand what it's like to walk outside my house and be afraid that I might die because of the color of my skin. That's not even a thing in my head. I wouldn't it doesn't even process because I've never had that experience because I don't, and I won't. Now, on the other hand, when I wrote this post, a friend of mine said, "Well, you're Latina, really look at that. I think that you've been, there's been oppression." I said, "Yes, there has, but not in the way that these individual males or people or class or whatever you want to call them of people have experienced the hate. There's it's not even the same. I couldn't even comprehend it. And for me to say this and understand this, I feel is powerful because I'm here saying I can understand that I don't understand. I don't know what you're going through, but I love you and I could be here for you and I can listen to you and I can have compassion and I can have empathy. I know what it's like to feel sad and hurt and someone tease me or make fun of me, but never fear for my life based on the color of my skin. I will never understand that. And for me to say I do would be arrogant. It would be completely. And even in males, right? I think males too. Males experience something different than females. Now, there's danger in all corners of life for everyone, right? No one's free from that. But to experience something like that is just because of color of your skin, even if you're a nice person. So to understand that, and I've had friends that I've asked questions about, right? Like, well, how do you feel about this, or how do you feel about that, or what happened to you in this way? Why do you feel like there's this racism, or why do you feel like that? And I myself have been, I would say, I don't want to say a victim, I'll say a survivor of exploitation from white men. Okay. And it was white men. It was white men. Now, the exploitation was awful, it was hurtful, but it was never to the extreme that I thought my life was in danger. So there's a difference. There's a difference when violence comes out and people are being beat up, being hurt, being harmed because of their skin color. It's I will never understand that. And I know that. And I'm okay with saying that, yeah, there comes some privilege with the color of my skin, but I'm still subject to, right, to some sort of exploitation or whatever else, and I can understand that, but not to the degree. And that's why, and then I was thinking, well, yeah, and that's why Black Lives Matter, because when you think about it, this color of our skin can distinguish how people engage with it. No, it's not. Yeah, this is not good. It's not. And here's the deal. It's been around forever, and I will tell you this. I don't know, Nitin. Even in India, right? I don't know if you're from India. I think you are, but they have whitening color in skin. I mean, when I lived out there, I was like, what in the world is this? Because it's revered to have lighter skin. These are things that are real. And until we talk about them, until we are able to be completely authentic about it and say, this is what's happening, there's not going to be healing in our world. There is privilege that does come. with the tone of your color, the tone of your skin socially. Is it right? No, but it's there. Did I create that? No. Did I say I want to be lighter in skin when I came out? No, that's how I came out. And my experience is vastly different because of it, which it shouldn't be, right? That's what we're saying. It shouldn't be. Everybody is human, and it shouldn't be defined on how you're approached by individuals because of the color of your skin. But that is the reality. It really is. I just can't express it. I have friends, and we were in, I'm just talking from all the experience that I had with my friends and individuals. And I had a friend who, two guys, right? And we were driving, no, it was three guys, and we are driving to the airport, right? They were all black men. And I was with them and stuff, and they were kind of talking about racism, and I'm like, really? Like, this was a long time ago too, because in my mind I'm like, people still think this way. And for me it was like, are you sure? And it's like, yeah. And so we were driving, and they were telling us, oh yeah, cops, they live in uh St. Louis and all different places. And they're like, all the time we get profiled, all the time we get, and these were gentlemen that were, I mean, I couldn't even imagine. So refined, so professional, so amazing. Yet, because their color of their skin, they were actually singled out. I've never been singled out by the cops. Okay. I'm not going to be singled out. I wouldn't even understand what that means. So these individuals were singled out when they're not doing nothing. They're amazing men. And I said, well, what is your experience? How do you feel? And they said, it's just ignorance. We've got to educate. We've got to educate people. We've got to educate our communities and let them know that violence is not the way, and that behaving a certain way is not the way, and that we are love, and that we speak peacefully. And for me, I just cried. I couldn't understand it. I was like, wow, I never thought about it. I never thought about it. It wasn't a thought in my head. Why? Because I'm not experiencing that, because I will never experience that, because I am not black. So I don't know what that is. And for us to be able to say this and say that there is some privilege that comes with the color of our skin, not because we want it, but because it's the color's identifiable. That's why. It's not that we asked for it. It's that the human nature can see color. And so it was a way to distinguish between us versus them. How do we oppress a group of people? Well, let's do it by color, because we can see color. But they're no different. We know that. We're all human. So I think the healing starts when we start to recognize and talk about these things. And I know that it may be uncomfortable for some individuals who are white in color, and I don't want to say white people, but just people who have a lighter skin tone, for them to even acknowledge that, for them to even say it. But the second that we do and we recognize it, and we open up our hearts to compassion and say, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Yes, I want to hear what you have to say. What did you go through? What is it that you went through in your life? How do you feel? And just being open to listen. There's going to be a great healing around it, and unity will resurface again. And I think we're starting to see that. It's hard for a white man, and I'm just going to use a white man for right now, to really say, oh, I have privilege in some ways. They won't understand. Sometimes they don't understand it, because they haven't lived in maybe the fear that some of these black men have. They don't worry about walking outside their door and that a cop might kill them. Those are thoughts in their head. So they can go on with their life just kind of, right? Like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But to live with that every single day and think, "Oh my god, if I go outside this house, my the fact that the color of my skin might actually get me killed by the cops." To think about that. And when I processed this from my friends, I was like, "Wow, that is like I could never I don't understand that." And for me to just be able to say I don't get it. It's okay to say you don't get it because some people won't. Some people can't, and that's okay. But unity is bridging and coming together, and I love it because we've talked about separation for so long that finally the consciousness, finally individual people are saying, how do we unite under one umbrella, under God's house? We are one under God's house. We can't separate from that. We're not outside that. We're within it. We're not without it. How do we unify and remember that we are all brothers and sisters? And I think that it's beautiful that we see this big, huge unity happening. I've seen pictures of cops kneeling, hugging people, and really maybe going in a different direction than I thought it might have gone, um, in my head, and where my judgments may have come in about how I think cops behave myself, because I was raised right in the streets. I was raised in poverty. I wasn't raised with a silver spoon in my mouth. I was around poverty my entire life. I I was on the streets. I think I've told people, "Good morning, Camila. Good morning, Juanita." I was in the streets growing up. I was in some of the worst neighborhoods with my cousins growing up, where I saw police and violence, and I saw a lot of different things in my life as well. But me, because I don't fit the racial profile, I never was in trouble. So I never could understand it. And it wasn't until someone brought it to my attention. And so I'm hoping that I can bring some insight to your attention to you in understanding sort of what's going on in this and why. So people saying, well, all lives matter. Yeah, okay. All lives do matter. But what we're talking about is the injustice that's happened based on skin color because it's identifiable, and the privileges that may come with the fact that you're white. Are you whiter, right? Or some people are lighter in skin tone. I have friends who are African American who are lighter in skin, and in their own culture, there's the racism happens. They recognize that they even get treated differently based on the skin tone. So you've got to understand that this is a real thing. It's not just people engage differently, right? Not all people, of course, but it's a different perspective. In other words, the viewpoint and the way that they engage the world and their perspective on the world is vastly different because they have different things that they're worried about, things that we ourselves, if you're lighter in skin tone, don't worry about. It's not even a thought because we've never had to experience it, just like my niece. So my niece was in a whole week got a bunch of her stuff stolen. She went to her teacher and her teacher said, he brought up the fact that she's colored and said, "Well, maybe you're being targeted because you're like basically because you're black." And my niece had never had that thought in her head. And she goes, "Oh my God, maybe I am." And she comes home and we're like, "Where did that come from?" Because her teacher would have never pulled me to side and say I was getting racially profiled. That I would never have that conversation with somebody. They would never tell me that. I've never been told that. So I was like, interesting that he would say these things to you. But again, we won't understand because, well, whoever's not, or people with lighter skin tone will never understand this. but we may understand what it's like to be exploited, right? What it's like to feel unwanted or to struggle or to work a little harder. But there's something deeper there for this community that's happened based on color because we can see it. And there is this white privilege that we have when our skin is lighter. And if you guys don't know that, hopefully you'll understand that now. Hopefully. Or the fact that my niece, when we go somewhere, people want to touch her hair. That really bothers her. They're like, "Ooh, can I touch it?" And she's like, "No." Like, people don't come up to me and be like, "Can I touch your hair?" They don't do that to me. I would never have that experience. It's uncomfortable. So I really wanted to just kind of dedicate this Spirit and Coffee to Black Lives Matter. I think it's important. I think that there's nothing to be ashamed of. Especially if you're lighter in color, that there's nothing to be the Big Brain Podcast. Good morning. There's nothing to be um worried about or afraid of, or in simply saying or even recognizing that you do have privileges in some way. In fact, it's going to help. And another thing, I did leave a video on my personal page of a master trainer. Her name's Betty Sproul. Love her. She was one of my master trainers when I was going through trainings. And I love the way that she talked about this. And she talked about it as a virus because she said we're going through, a pandemic, a virus, and that race itself is the biological piece of it. But when you add the ism to it, right? The race ism, and I like the way she said that, is that when you add the ism to it, that it becomes this virus, which is really a practice. Okay, racism is a practice of a certain behavior. Okay, when you add ism to it. And what she said and what I enjoyed is that racism needs a host, just like a virus needs a host. So if racism was the virus, it needs a host. So how we interact with our own internal understanding of this, right? That we have a choice. We have a choice to engage in that or not. Be the host of love or be the host of racism and separation. And it's okay to understand. Okay. I'm glad your path has about what is impressed upon your heart. You do good. Thank you, Suze. Yeah, I think it's important to talk about because it's really hit home for me in terms of especially my niece, because my niece has gone through some stuff and she wanted to march and I said, I'll go with you. I will go protest with you. Um, because her identity was always an issue with our family, was she raised in predominantly Hispanic, Latino family, and her being the only one who has had African American blood. And so she was trying to figure out how she fit in. She just couldn't understand at times. And so us being able to tell her how beautiful she was in her own way and that there was no difference between us and that her beauty is an internal thing, and for her to be 17 years old and really I feel like a queen, a powerhouse of a person, and for her to have also the ability to understand how she fits into all of this. Okay, hi Quadi. How she popped into how does she fit into all of this, and understanding how I'll never understand what she's gone through in the way that she has and the derogatory things that she's been called. I was called names, but not in a derogatory sense. It's just a little bit different, right? It's different. because behind that derogatory language comes violence, comes the ability for somebody to totally kill an individual, which is just beyond me. And think about how many people have lived in fear that that might be them next. I don't think that way. I can't think that way because I've never, that community is always on, like, is this could this happen to me? I'm a good person. And then because of my color, now I have to worry that I might be beaten up by the cops and not doing anything wrong. Like, that's not a thought in my mind. I don't even, how do I wouldn't even, I don't even, it's not a thought in my mind. It's not there. But I can recognize that. I can have compassion for those who may be experiencing that. I would love to hear from those individuals that experience that. What does it mean to them? How do they work through that? So remember that racism needs a host. I like the way she, like again, I like the way Betty Sproul was saying this, that the host itself, it needs a place to live, and that we can heal that if we're a host of love. If we're able to open up our hearts and our minds and remember that love is all there is, and that we can unify under one human, right? That we understand that we're all human and love. But that doesn't mean that we don't talk about the hard things that need to be talked about, and that we don't accept and look at and say, hey, yeah, because of my skin color, I probably have privilege. Do I want it to be that way? No, but it is that way. And that we can say it is. It just is. Doesn't mean that I want it. Just means that I don't have the same experience. And I'm okay with understanding that, and I'm okay with communicating that, and I'm okay with standing up and saying, "You know what? Everybody gets to feel the same way that I do. Everybody gets to walk out of their house, right? Um, and not feel like they're gonna get killed because of the color of their skin." That's just, I don't understand it, and I never will. And I think that when we can talk about this as individuals, right, especially us people who are lighter in skin, can say this and be honest about it, then we can unite, and say, no, it's not okay. It is not okay. It's just not. So that's some of what I gone through. I don't know what your stories are. I would love to hear your stories. But I will say this, I see the world taking a turn in a way that, there's usually patterns do repeat themselves, and we do know this. And typically, I'm pretty good at seeing the patterns and what may come next. But this whole scenario that's been going on, I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that cops would be out there taking knees. I didn't know that, cops would be out there hugging people and uniting with the protesters, and would recognize that the rioters and the looters were not part of the peaceful marches. But they do recognize that, and they want to protect those who want to protest peacefully. I think that that's a great feat. I think that what we're seeing right now, is amazing. If we can be peaceful, right, and talk about our ideas in a peaceful way, and live in harmony, um, I think we'll do a good job. And I think we see this happening around the world, which is pretty exciting in a lot of ways. It's like the hand of God coming down to say, look, we can all love one another. We can all love one another and still have our opinions. We can still rise up in unity and do it peacefully without having to harm or hurt anybody. So remember, there's a distinction. The peaceful protesters are there. And then there's those who are just looting and doing those things because they're angry or whatever's going on for them, or they think it's fun. Whatever happened in the people that are doing those things, are not part of the peaceful protests. There are peaceful protesters out there standing for what is right and just. So I hope that this helps you. Good morning, Antonio. I hope that this helps you, and I hope that you get a little bit closer to understanding how you fit into all of this, because you do. You're a part of it. We're all a part of it, and we're all have a key role in it some way, be it in our families, be it to our community, be it to the world, be it to ourselves. So asking yourself, right? And remembering that it is vastly different. Skin tone does determine a lot of things, I promise you. It does. I know. So I've been through it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand. And discrimination at the level of fearing for your life is something that I've never experienced. And that's why Black Lives Matter. That's why. Because I'll never get it. But I unite and stand strong and saying it's not the way. So I hope this helps. I absolutely thankful that I was able to talk about this and express this. Um, and again, circling back to love all the time, because that's what this is about, love. We can go through all the crazy and chaos, but we bring it back to love. So love yourself, love your brothers and your sisters, your nieces and your nephews, your grandchildren if you have them, and everything. Bring it back to love, okay? So I love you. Namaste. It is Wednesday, in case you didn't know. Salud with my beautiful coffee. Very grateful to be having coffee. Something to be grateful for. Okay. So I love you guys. Have a great day. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye. Blessings to you and yours as well, Suze. Many blessings.